Imagine a clear blue sky, few clouds in the sky, a sunny day, high mountains on the horizon, green grass. Can you see that? Can you do that? Or for something different, just imagine a white triangle on a black background. Can you see that? Just a white triangle. Close your eyes. Do you see it? Well, chances are you found that pretty crazy. Of course, I can imagine a triangle, right? I know how a triangle looks. But there are quite a few people who can't. So, who cannot just close their eyes and really see anything. This, since a few years, this has been called aphantasia, and it's the inability to see something with your inner eye, with your mind's eye. Of course, even though it has had this name for such a short time, this has existed for longer. And if I just speak of myself as an example, I think I knew that there was something wrong or unsatisfying with me since I was about 20. So people used to have vivid dreams, and I had the impression that other people could imagine something, and I tried to practice that. First, I tried things like faces or landscapes, more complex things, say, but there was no way I could imagine a face or something. So it seemed like I could zoom in on things, perhaps part of a nose or part of an ear, but a whole face, no way. And then I tried to practice with simple stuff, like triangles, like in my example. And turned out I was just unable to even see a triangle in my mind. How's that possible? Surely everyone knows how a triangle looks, right? But the fact is, many people in fact can't do that. So the numbers I've read was like 2 or 3% of the population. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, it's possible you are one of them, or there's someone you have to do with has this. So it should be interesting to know about. Well, how did that come to be better known? Well, in 2016, there was a blog post by a guy named Blake Ross on Facebook, which made this, let's call it condition, pretty well known. So the blog post was called Aphantasia, How It Feels to Be Blind in Your Mind. And it's a really, really cool read. So I'm not going to read it here to you, but you can just look it up later and go through it. It's a very vivid description. Say things like, if you tell me to imagine a beach, I ruminate on the concept of a beach. I know there's sand, I know there's water, I know there's sun, maybe lifeguard, I know facts about beaches. I know a beach when I see it, and etc., but I cannot see them, like flesh to, he says, no visual, audio, emotional, or otherwise sensory experience. And then in this blog post, he just he goes into stuff that's related, let's say. So, for example, he has people asking questions like, well, how do you imagine things? Of course, not that, can you draw? Okay, perhaps, I don't know, I can totally identify with that, so I cannot draw at all. Can you spell? That's a pretty interesting question, because people answer pretty different stuff to that. How do you navigate directions? It's a catastrophe, like this also would go for me, for example, anything spatial. And so really I can just say this is a really recommendable, interesting post to read. How about more material on this? Well, in fact, there is a book written by Alan Kendall, and this is he basically he asks about 20 people just about different aspects of their life, possibly related with aphantasia. And now, if you read such a book and you read things about what people found difficult in school or what's difficult at work, I think you will always find stuff you can identify with, other stuff which doesn't match so well. And overall, although it's really it's a very nice book to read, the thing is there is no clear patterns emerging. Of course, personally, for example, I can identify with that person who says, well, geometry was a catastrophe for me in school, so it didn't work at all. Algebra was okay, but geometry, no way, or anything spatial. But even such a simple thing like spelling, there's people who say, oh, I can't do that at all, or I couldn't do that at all. Others are really good at it. For example, talking of myself again, this was really something I think as a child I had a near photographic memory for how to spell a word, just saw it once and remembered it kind of forever. But there are big differences, and the book always also goes into aspects like social life or mental health and so on. And there you really see that, okay, people have, for example, he has the question like, do you sometimes feel disconnected? And then there's the answer, oh yeah, sure I do. And some people relate it to their aphantasia, but who knows, right? I mean, there's lots of other things going on in the brain, and for sure you cannot relate stuff that easily. So what really would be nice if we had studies about this. I didn't really find so much. One study I found was this year, the neural correlates of visual imagery, a coordinate-based meta-analysis. So this is about like where does activity show up related to imagination in the brain. This is of course interesting, and it would be great to have more studies of that, but it does not exactly touch on the on aphantasia, right? I mean, and of course the real interesting thing is, what is this correlated with, or how does it impact your life? And so as I cannot in this video present any new results, so I haven't done a study or something, let me say why I did this video. So first reason is, now, well, maybe you are one of the people who have this, right? Aphantasia. And it may be just a relief to hear other people have it too. And perhaps just to hear how one can possibly cope with it. I don't want to dramatize it, like using a word like cope, but anyway, the thing is, let's take an example, materials on the net in some subject area. So for me it would be stuff connected to data science, statistics, machine learning, and there's lots of really awesome blog posts out there, lots of great material, and I would say the dominating paradigm is that visualization is perhaps maybe the most important thing. And now what do you do if you just have problems visualizing? Well, for me, as an example, a few weeks ago I got a recommendation for a great blog post, which was very visual. It was a great blog post, but what do I do when I read such a post? Well, when I see that a visualization is going to be complex, then I take a very quick moment just trying to assess if it's worth it for me spending the time to understand that visualization. So perhaps I already have the impression I pretty much understand what it's about just from the words, right? So then perhaps I can just skip the visualization. Or if it's more or less mathy and there was a formula, well, maybe if I already understood the formula, I can just skip the visualization again. But perhaps I can't, and then sometimes I just really decide, okay, now I really need to take the time and understand what's displayed there. So that's one thing. Then, so this was more like short stuff, like blog posts. How about books? Of course, in a way, the same thing goes there too. But something I do there is I very much choose what I read, not only by the topic I want to read about, but also by the way it is written. And one example for me is I really in the area of linear algebra, I'm really a big fan of Gilbert Strang, so I have all his books, which means like even if I'm not a priori interested in the topics, so there are many examples are pretty much from engineering, and I don't have a priori such an inclination for that, but it's just a style I find I can very well learn from. I mean, if you want, you can even say the matrices displayed in the books. He really displays a lot of matrices with simple numbers as examples. You could say it's some kind of visualization in a way, but it's a simple form of visualization. Stuff like triangular matrices, for example, and this really helps me. And so, to get back to the thing I was going to say, when I notice that a book is written in a style that I can well learn from, I'm just gonna read more from that person. Another example would be for the second time I'm watching the video lectures by, I think he's called Brad Osgood on the it's called Applications of the Fourier Transform, I think. And it's just the very conceptual way he presents things. I mean, there are of course formulas for the Fourier transform, there have to be, but the way he really stresses the things that go on a more abstract level or conceptual level really totally helps me understand and also of course this keeps me interested in that stuff. Yeah, and of course one medium today that's very great to learn from are videos, right? And probably 3 blue 1 brown, these super great awesome math videos. I find them great and awesome, just like about everyone else. So what do I do when I really want to learn about something? Well, one technique I found was if the visual channel, the optical channel, and the auditory, that's too much at once, I do it one after the other. For example, I may listen to something first and then just watch it without the audio. Or perhaps I do the mixed mode first and then just watch it without the audio. And then I already know what it's about, and I just look on the video. So this is one thing. Yeah. So this was the first reason. So why I made this video, for the people who perhaps have this, right? But of course there are also many people producing great materials like on data science, machine learning, statistics, whatever, who don't have it and who are naturally inclined to assume that visualization is always good. And for them it may just help to know that there are these people around, these aphantasic people, and just perhaps to keep that in mind. And just one thing I would recommend from my experience is like keep stuff simple, right? So I've heard the recommendation that you put visuals as well as verbal stuff, words, small phrases on the slide, for example, when giving a talk. And from my experience, that's too much. So if I have something complex and visual on a slide, and I'm already busy reading the words, I won't be able to process it both at one time. Of course, in a video, you can pause it, or you can just play it at slower speed. But in real life, say I listen to a talk and I can't stop, and just by spending the time to quickly read the words, I may have already, I'm already behind in processing the visual. So perhaps, yeah, if you create a talk and you're a very visual person, keep in mind others necessarily are not everyone is, right? And yeah, to come to the final thing, I think this area really would deserve more studies. What's interesting about it, of course, neuroscientific correlates, what's going on in the brain, or what's kind of wrong for this to happen. I'm not gonna hypothesize, I'm not a neuroscientist. That's one thing, but the other thing really also is is it possible to make statements about how this affects other areas, like learning, or just like, let's say, information processing overall, right? We have all, like I just added to this, like all these subjective experience reports, but what really would be awesome would be to have studies about it. So if you're like a neuroscientist or a psychologist and watch this and would like to would be interested in it, why not make a study about aphantasia? Thanks for listening.